Hey guys, it's Optimus Primal. I'm back with another video, and today I am continuing to try and get my Q&A done, because last time I tried to actually do all 10 videos that I did throughout 2017 and try and answer some questions out of each and every single one of them. Unfortunately, my voice gave out, and I decided to put it on hold because I also wanted to get you guys my Titans Return review, which I got up on the channel. And I'm also going to answer the questions for the rest of the videos for 2017. And I want to try and do this a little bit more frequently. I think it might be something that you might want to see, me answering some of your guys' questions. Because again, that's kind of the whole point, is everything is going to be Transformers discussions. And just so that you know, I will have more Transformers discussion videos as well as other videos in the near future. So please stay tuned, because I've got lots more stuff down the road. The first video that we're going to talk about is Starscream's ghost. Now, this video I decided to do because I had already done Why Did Megatron Keep Starscream Around, but because of the nature of Starscream as a character, and since he is like within almost every single Transformers series out there, it was a novel idea to do a separate topic on him as to why in the world is he a ghost if he's just another Decepticon. Well, it turns out that his spark is actually different, and he actually is immortal in some sort of way, because his spark is actually mutated. Now, as to how he became his spark got mutated, we've got so many theories. We've got every theory from whether or not Galvatron's blast actually did that to him, to maybe he mutated it himself, maybe he did some experiments on himself. And I also don't believe that Megatron knew, neither did Starscream, that Starscream had an immortal spark. It just probably occurred at the point of his death. But as to where or how, it's unknown. So let's go take a look at the questions. The Beast Wars episode takes place right after the 1986 movie. His fresh memory of that event implies that he traveled back in time, then forward after the events of the episode. Now, this is something that I kind of lean towards, and the reason why I do is because it would make sense that Beast Wars, the way that the events take place and the way Starscream's knowledge of things happen to be, are very, very different than obviously the events that happened during Season 3. This also has to do with the fact that the writers of Beast Wars only saw a select number of episodes of G1 as well as the 1986 movie, so they purposefully took what events they could and what they knew in how to make the episode Possession. They knew about more episodes as Beast Wars progressed. So it is possible that maybe right after Starscream's death, that maybe the death blasted him right back in time through a transwarp, portal. He ended up in Beast Wars. Maybe got blasted back to the present, where he then possessed Cyclonus in Starscream's Ghost, and then he possessed Scourge in Ghost in the Machine. I also like to believe that he also came back as a pretender in a non-shown episode, but that's, obviously speculation. I thought Beast Wars happened during the time when the Transformers were still in stasis before the volcano erupted, which doesn't explain how Starscream is a ghost if he was on the Ark with the others. The thing is that his ghost happened to be present during the Beast Wars, but it time traveled. He actually stated that he actually did time travel through the reaches of space and through the reaches of time, because he obviously died on Cybertron in 2005. But Beast Wars takes place, like the present of Beast Wars is 300 years after the Autobots and Decepticons had their battle, and which could be 500 years in the future, or it could be 20 years from now. We don't know. But we do know that the Maximals and the Predacons obviously are their descendants, and they time traveled back in time to prehistoric Earth. So that's the actual time frame for Beast Wars. But his ghost, we don't know if it time traveled from the point of his death in in the 1986 movie in the year 2005, or whether or not he time traveled. Maybe he just happened to be floating through space and he fell through the same transwarp portal as the Maximals and Predacons did and ended up in their present. We don't know. I seem to recall Starscream stating in Beast Wars that he roamed to the end of time. Whether or not that's true, it's likely that his new body simply wore out from old age, eventually, was unable to create and find a permanent host body that suited him. I don't think that he actually traveled all the way to the end of time. I think that his spark was basically floating through space at some point, and because it was indestructible, he couldn't die, but he fell back in time. And I think that it's possible that maybe he fell through the same transwarp portal that, sent the Maximals and the Predacons. I'm kind of like in the air as to where the episode Possession and Beast Wars takes place, but it's kind of like one of those that you're wondering, it doesn't quite line up, but it does. So I don't think that he traveled all the way through, to the end of time. I think he somehow traveled back and then obviously got transported forward. Beast Wars isn't a good continuation of the original Transformers because of the inconsistencies in the show. This is mainly due to the original comics references thrown in, Covenant of Primus, etc. Beast Wars was meant to take place after the G2 comics, not the original show. Well, yes and no. Beast Wars takes place both after the original comic, either G2 or the original G1 Marvel run, or the cartoon. It's designed to be like this. It can take place after either or. The thing is that Beast Machines is its sequel, and Beast Machines does a lot of references to the G1 cartoon. And so Beast Wars and Beast Machines, even though they add in a lot of stuff from the the comics, it does take place after the cartoon. So Beast Wars can be a sequel to both. I like to think that Beast Wars is a sequel to the G1 cartoon, and it actually retcons back in things like the Covenant of Primus, retcons things in like Sparks and Stasis Lock and all of that stuff. It all retcons in and actually makes the G1 cartoon fit into the entire Transformers multiverse a lot better in a way, because what it actually does is it fixes a lot of holes, but then it creates new ones. But then again, what cartoon series doesn't? Every time they do a continuation of any cartoon series, there's going to be inconsistencies, somewhere, and that's because new writers take over and they try to fill in one plot hole and they create another. It just happens. To be honest, since he was vaporized by Galvatron might be the reason, let me explain. Galvatron shot mutated Starscream. And then, of course, there was the next one. It was the first time Galvatron used his weapon. And this goes along with the theory that it was Galvatron's blast that actually destroyed Starscream and mutated his spark at the same time, since Galvatron was fully powered at that point. He came right fresh off of the presses, from Unicron, while Unicron was still functioning and giving him all his power, which might explain why Galvatron, went insane after Unicron's destruction, which is a whole discussion for another day. But it is a possibility that his spark was mutated at that point from Galvatron's blast. It's also possible that his spark was mutated prior to that point, and the infusion of Galvatron's blast actually was the catalyst that mutation in Starscream's spark actually caused it the immortality. So it might have been a twofold problem and solution, so to speak, that actually made Starscream a ghost. You forgot about Transformers Animated. Starscream coming back from the dead over and over with his indestructible spark due to the Allspark shard in his head as an homage to Ghost Starscream. Yes and no, because in Animated, when they're dead, they're dead. But the Allspark itself seemed to be the reason why so many Transformers were alive, and they weren't alive at the end of Transformers Animated when the show ended. But I wasn't going to talk about it because, he was fully alive when the Allspark fragment was in his head. So in reality, I didn't mention it for that reason, because he was alive. I always assumed that Starscream died a second time at the end of the episode Ghost in the Machine. We see Starscream tumble through space and passes by Galvatron. Galvatron starts shooting at Starscream wildly and hits him a few times. Starscream clearly has smoke spewing from his body. This smoke means he's damaged, so I believe Starscream floated around in space and died a second time. His spark leaves his body and tumbles through time and space, eventually ending up in Beast Wars. This would line up without any problems to continuity, without trying to add in things like, oh, what about Pretender Starscream, and what about this, and what about that, because they were trying to revive Starscream. Well, this would line up with the events that happened, that he just floated through space, died a second time, became a spark, fell through the time, the transwarp portal, ended up in a distant past, faced off against the Maximals and Predacons, got blasted back. Maybe he got blasted back to the present, still as an indestructible spark. We don't know. So I do think that this probably fits and fills the hole quite nicely. So I don't think that there really is any holes to fill. This is just basically explains it. Starscream was a scientist before he joined Megatron, so he probably did experiments on the other Transformers trying to make an immortal spark. And this goes along, again, with what I was saying before, that maybe he did some experiments on himself, and the blast from Galvatron was a catalyst to the mutation that he had already experimented on. And he didn't know he was immortal, it just basically happened from the blast from Galvatron, and maybe did like basically a tag team for the two, so maybe that's a possibility too. You're forgetting Beast Wars is a prequel to the G1 cartoon. No, I didn't. It's actually a sequel and a prequel at the same time, because it explains events that happen in G1, and yet then explains, the end of the war did happen. Now, in conclusion with this video, I also wanted to make a fair notion that, of course, Titans Return has done its own take on Starscream's ghost, and this time it was caused by the Enigma of Combination, and was caused by the fact that the 13 Primes were the ones who actually revived Starscream in this in Titans Return. And oh my god, that series was so bad. Alright, in my next video, I actually decided to take on the Dinobots and actually do a full-on retrospective of the Dinobots in preparation for the fact that they were announcing the new Power of the Primes Dinobots. Now, the Dinobot toys are now on the shelves. You can buy Grimlock, you can buy Slag, and Swoop. I know he's called Slug in the toy line. And they are also going to be releasing Sludge and, Snarl in the next wave. So, if you guys are Dinobot fans, definitely pick those toys up. But this video is also, really fun to do because, first of all, it's one of my longest videos because I put a lot of time and energy into it. I know a lot of you guys ask me to do longer videos, and I covered, both aspects of, the covering of the G1 Dinobots. And then on top of it, I had a nice guest appearance with Diamond Bolt. And those of you guys who are big Diamond Bolt fans, I'm sure this was a treat, and I know it was a really, fun thing to do. I would like to do more collaboration videos with other Transformers YouTubers if they're welcome, if they're welcoming to do so. I would gladly, do a video with any one of them, so the invitation's open. Let's go take a look at the questions. Volcanicus is the worst name for a Dinobot combiner ever. Yeah, I think Volcanicus is pretty bad, but the Beast, I think, is worse. Probably because the Beast is just that bad. But Volcanicus, I guess it works. Personally, I want to get the new Dinobots. I haven't been able to pick them up myself, but I will tell you this much. They will not be in combined form on my toy shelf. They will stay as 5 separate Dinobots like they should be. I don't even think that the Dinobots should combine. They're so powerful that they don't need to combine. Very comprehensive review, Rodimus Primal. Glad to see you include the Marvel Comics versions of Dinobots, which I preferred over the cartoon, which was really childish at times. Oh, and Rip Snarl in the Transformers movie. He was one of my favorites, and I'm mad they left him out. Well, I like the Marvel Comics origin, but of course I'm a G1 cartoon fan, so obviously I'm going to go with the G1 cartoon. It is the reason why I went back and thought about, like, okay, they have to be living Cybertronians that want to be on Cybertron, so I honestly think that they have sparks, which is why I got to that theory and actually tried to take a little bit of that, comic, aspect to it and, apply it in some form or fashion. The comics origin is good for the G1 Marvel comic if it fits in the Marvel multiverse. And the reason for that is because the Savage Land, you really can't take the Savage Land out of the Marvel Universe, or Marvel Multiverse, for that matter. So, that being said, the G1 comic is firmly planted in Marvel, whereas the cartoon seems to fit better, in its own universe outside of that. So, like, I like the diversity of both origins. As for Snarl, obviously I covered that in my who survived the movie in Transformers the movie, which I'll get to. The Dinobots have sparks, or they be nothing but drones, not sentient like the other Cybertronians. And this is exactly what I was talking about, is that they definitely do have sparks. I think that they were implanted with sparks of previous Autobots, and which is why they're probably named after the previous Dinobots, or Lightning Strike Coalition, or whatever you want to call them. So I do think that they have sparks. Ever notice that the Dinobots are the only 1984-85 G1 Autobots capable of robot mode flight without jetpacks, like all of the Decepticons? While it's difficult to speak of the origins of their sparks, I believe that at least their bodies were made out of captured Decepticon parts. Would also explain why they tried to destroy the Ark when first activated and constantly had to be begged to help the Autobots, as well as why they were so dumb. They were rebuilt with damaged, deficient brains that prevented them from remembering their past. Try to remember their past. That's actually pretty funny. But at the same time, believe it or not, the reason why they have flight is because they were built to have flight. But in the original storyboards, they were all supposed to put on jetpacks, and I would definitely have to put on my list as to why most of the Autobots cannot fly. On my list of videos to do in the future. But the Dinobots, the reason why they can fly is because it was built into them. I believe that they actually have jetpacks. Like, if you actually look, like, most of them have wings, so they can fly because they were built that way. So that's the reason why the Dinobots can fly. No Power Link Combiner? Yeah, this was one that I missed, but I missed it because I was talking about the original G1 Dinobots. Grimstone is more or less his own, combiner. I don't really consider him a Dinobot, in respect that basically he is an Autobot with a dinosaur mode, and he has dinosaur Autobot drones that combine, because that's what the Power Core combiners were. And it's probably one of those toy lines that you kind of look at and you go, it's okay, whatever, and it's kind of put it to the side. But I did forget it. But I do consider, actually, they actually consider Volcanicus, I think, is the first Dinobot combiner, I think, officially, even though you could say that, Grimstone actually is, unofficially. Your dad looks like Pablo Escobar.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
So, somebody online says you look like the drug lord Pablo Escobar.
I wish I had his money.
If everything combines, what's different anymore? Wasn't part of the appeal the ones who combined were just a few? Don't get me wrong, I love what ifs. And I totally agree. I think that combiners need to be like a special breed of Transformer, and not every Transformer can combine. And if I am probably going to do a combiner video in the future, but at the same time, I think that, not every Transformer should combine. I think it was kind of cool that they made Optimus a combiner in Combiner Wars, the toy line, for the sheer reason that, the episode Masquerade had Optimus and 4 other Autobots pretend to be the Stunticons, but they weren't truly a combiner. It was a novel idea. And I think the same thing out of the Dinobots. I don't think the Dinobots need to combine. And the reason why is because they're so powerful in their own right, they don't need to be a combiner. But I guess they wanted them to be a combiner in the new toy line, and now we have Volcanicus. Oh well. Now, the next video I covered had to do with Optimus Prime's death. This was a special episode for Halloween because I wanted to talk about the zombie Optimus. And it was something really fun to do to actually cover that topic. I was trying to insert more jokes into my videos. It's something that I'm very, very calm, and you guys know this. You guys watch my videos. I'm a very, very calm person, except for when you get me angry. Please don't get me angry and get me talking about Titan's Return again. But at the same time, I thought it was really fun to do. So I also really wanted to cover this because it seems to be an inconsistency between Optimus Prime at the end of Dark Awakening and the beginning of the Return of Optimus Prime, because the Return of Optimus Prime is so full of plot holes that, you know, it really needs an explanation of itself, and that's the reason why I did the video. So let's take a look at some of the questions. Fun fact, the reactions to Optimus's death from Transformers the movie led to a change for G.I. Joe the movie. One character who was supposed to die was said to be in just a coma. This is something so hysterical, and it's because Optimus Prime died, and the movie was shown first, and then they did the My Little Pony movie, and both movies tanked. And because they both tanked, and because of the reaction to Optimus Prime's death, G.I. Joe the movie, who had approved that they were going to kill Duke. In fact, they had the idea that they were going to kill Duke before they even thought about killing Optimus Prime, you know, right from the get-go. And Duke died in the original cut of the movie, but they had to completely change it because of Optimus Prime's death. And so you look at the wound that Duke takes, it's like straight through the heart. There's literally no way that he can survive that. And because he's slipped into a coma, and you're like, what? And he comes out of it. How is Optimus Prime able to come back? Come on, man. He had the touch. He had the power. I never understood why Rodimus went back to Hot Rod after he gave the Matrix to Zombie Prime. To me, it doesn't make sense. It should be like an update to a video game. Once the game gets the update, it stays that way for the rest of his life. But in Hot Rod's case, he downgrades. Once he gets upgraded, installed realistically, shouldn't it stay that way? Well, think of it almost like this. Hot Rod himself was magically transformed into Rodimus Prime with the power of the Matrix. So, in his core, he still is Hot Rod. He hasn't matured enough to actually be Rodimus Prime yet. He basically got the role and became the leader because the Matrix itself, you know, empowered him to be so. Orion Pax was blasted to pieces and, you know, was rebuilt by Alpha Trion to be Optimus. And when he was given the Matrix, he became Optimus Prime, but he doesn't revert back to being, you know, Orion Pax because he was literally built into Optimus Prime. Hot Rod was magically transformed, so that's what actually reverts him back. And it would take probably, you know, a lot of years of experience for Hot Rod to have a permanent change, even without the Matrix, to be Rodimus Prime permanently. I agree with your theory. Optimus's spark was transferred back from the Matrix. Does Rodimus see him again later? If so, then an echo of Optimus remained inside as well. As to his repairs, it could have been the scientists, but there was another issue. He was operational until the end of Dark Awakening, but he's offline in Return of Optimus. The Matrix is capable of major alterations to a physical chassis. See Hot Rod to Rodimus Prime. What if the Matrix restored him, but this took the last of his energon and left him not quite operational, as in some major internal damage regarding the spark chamber? Something Autobot science can't fix, but the Quintessons who designed the species could. Alternately, if retconning the Primus mythos into G1, the Quintessons can fix him due to their being an elder race. And this kind of makes sense also because if you recall at the you know, at the beginning of Return of Optimus Prime, I'm picking up, you know, life signs. It's an Autobot Optimus Prime, but he's completely offline and they don't know how to fix him. And that actually makes sense for him to actually have used up all of his energon, but then reformed, you know, obviously his body, you know, maybe the body damage from the Matrix itself, just like, you know, it was said here. And that actually fills in a lot of the gaps that I was talking about. I mean, to me, I actually look at it, it's simply an animation error, and the fact that they had to very quickly bring Optimus Prime back, you know, after his death. And the episode aired in February, and mind you that the movie aired in August. Dark Awakening aired in October, so quite literally they had like 3 months to get that episode made and aired, you know, in time. So, you know, it's a marvel that they were able to do that with the plot holes that they created themselves. Zombie Prime, you ain't seen nothing yet. I don't remember much from this episode when YouTube was still fresh back in the early 2000s, but I came across a Japanese exclusive character for Season 3 of G1 called Giltar, and yet again another zombie Frankenstein by the Quints that combined both Optimus and Megatron parts while in the spark of Starscream. This was the manga. This is something that was really, really weird, and I like to overlook it. It's kind of one of those like, yeah, it happened. It's kind of like the unmentionable Kiss players. Awesome. I don't think the mind of Optimus came from the Matrix. I think the Matrix brought his former spark back from the Allspark once the Matrix felt it was in possession of a former Prime. After that, I agree with you. We went into stasis lock, and the rest of the story, the Quintesson only restores his body to get out of stasis lock. Even though I think your version is a good one, I think it has to do more with the spark of Optimus. There are so many things the Matrix can do, and even the Primes who held it ignore its full potential. I think it's something that maybe I have to do an episode on the Matrix. This makes Megatron the most brutal supervillain ever, having murdered Prime. Totally agree, because not many supervillains usually win. There are very few supervillains that succeed in their goal. Megatron obviously succeeded in conquering Cybertron, which obviously was usurped by the end of it, and he was successful in being the one to kill Optimus Prime. It's kind of like Kefka was successful in destroying the world in Final Fantasy VI, and I guess Sephiroth was successful in... Oh, no, never mind. I'm not going to let a samurai near my daughter. I think Daniel hit it on the head when he said Prime was in a coma. His body is damaged doesn't mean his spark is. No, I actually think his spark definitely entered the Allspark because he spoke from within the Matrix to Rodimus Prime. So he definitely 100% died. He was not in a coma. It was he was revived by the Matrix, which again is where his spark was to begin with, so he left the Matrix and re-entered his body. Toei has been doing that same animation problem still today. Check out the errors in Dragon Ball Super. I have still yet to watch Dragon Ball Super. I was a big fan of DBZ when it first came out here in the US, and I love Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball, a whole heck of a lot more than Z. Just because Z goes on and on and on and on and on and on about powering up and powering up. And I have still yet to watch Dragon Ball Super. But yeah, Toei does do quite a bit of animation errors. This is not obviously the first time that they've done so, you know. But at the same time, they're still a pretty good animation studio. They do really good work. So, you know, there's some things to forgive, I guess. And so the next video that I actually did had to do with mass shifting or mass displacement or whatever you want to call it. How can a transformer go from, you know, something really small and transform into a full-size robot? And that had to do with, you know, some pseudoscience that had to come up with Cybertronian technology. And it was also how you can explain how the Decepticons can all fit inside Astrotrain. To be fair, IDW seems to be the one that officially called it mass displacement. Alien transforming robot technology is always amazing. I think the term mass shifting is what most people accept if you're a Transformers fan, and if you're a IDW Comics fan only, or if, you know, you're someone who's writing for the IDW, you call it mass displacement. I like to call it mass shifting. I think it's an easier term. It rolls off the tongue a little bit easier, and that's just what we go with. I still think it's amazing technology as well. I like the term mass shifting. As a kid, I would suspend disbelief when watching the cartoon because it was freaking awesome, and still is. G1 for life. It was only when playing with the toys and trying to create my own storylines that the issue of scale were unavoidable. Nowadays, though, I think of it as advances in Cybertronian tech that enables some of Transformers to shrink or expand their size while transforming. I imagine it being a very energy-intensive process. It sucked having to pretend while playing with TF action figures, but at least the cartoon made it look so freaking cool when it happened. I agree. G1 for life, man. I'm going to be a G1 hardcore, probably, you know, for as long as I live, because it's where it all started, it's where it all comes from, it's where it all began. And at the same time, yeah, you have to think about scale in a relative term when it comes down to Transformers, because if you really think about it, I mean, the Minibots really can't interact well with the other Transformers because they all transform into similar sized cars. They're not like, you know, they shouldn't be, you know, so varying in scale like they are. I mean, Starscream should tower over the Autobots, but he doesn't. And so what I think it has to do with is there is some varying degree of scale changing, just for the fact that, you know, their bodies have to be a specific size. You're overthinking. They're aliens. The technology can't be explained in human terms. It's kind of like Time Lord technology. Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. A discussion for another day. Why Bayformers is stupid. Don't get me started on Michael Bay. Here's a good question. How could Optimus Prime fit the Dinobots into his trailer? Or how could Galvatron fit into Cyclonus' cockpit? Could subspace be working inside a Transformer's body and not just disappearing into a storage pocket? Also, the idea of what could shrink inside a Transformer's body due to how much energy they had. I think that, and this is obviously crossing universes, that maybe, just maybe, Cybertronian tech is merged with Time Lord tech, and that's how, like, a Transformer can fit inside. But that's, you know, quite a far-fetched stretch. But I think it has to do with the fact that, you know, they are, you know, shifting in size so that this way they can be used when, you know, this way they can be used for whatever purpose they're going to be used when they're in vehicle mode. So, physics says that turning electrons into neurons and tau particles can alter size as they need to be closer to atomic nucleus to work. All right, I'm not a science major, but this might be the explanation that we're looking for. Personally, mass displacement. I've always gone that apart from obvious artistic incongruities, any Transformer can mass displace to a certain degree. Alright, this one was really, really long, but it kind of explains everything. It's kind of like there is a science behind it. We don't truly understand it. It's alien in nature. We don't know how they or why they were able to transform the way that they are, but you know, it's kind of cool, and I don't think it takes, you know, us out of it. I think it's a really cool idea that they can actually mass shift in that way, especially when it comes down to specific vehicles. I do think that they use a lot of energy in order to do so. I think depending upon continuity, how much energy is discharged from it. Obviously in IDW, the energy discharge is quite cool to look at. But in reality, I mean, Megatron can just flip in the air, transform into a gun, and any Decepticon or human can use him, depending upon how much size changing he actually does. I don't think he is the first Target Master, though, because Target Masters tend to bond with their partners, and that is why Megatron can easily just transform, and he's not actually connected to whatever Transformer or human that he's actually being used by. Alright, the next movie, I decided to cover all of the deaths that actually occurred within Transformers the movie. And the reason why I did was because there was so much inconsistency in who actually died, who didn't die, where did this character go, where did that character go. And I think I might cover Prowl and Wheeljack a little bit more when I get into Japanese continuity, when I eventually do the videos on those. But at the same time, I think it was a good, you know, idea to go through all of, you know, the deaths. So this way that we had an idea. These are the characters that definitively died. The characters that were not shown dead, unless it was like a storyboard, I think are dead. I do think that Mirage, Red Alert, and Trailbreaker did die in addition to the other characters that were shown dead in the movie, and that the rest of the Autobots and Decepticons that were alive at the end of the movie are definitively alive. I personally think that Shockwave is alive, and maybe, just maybe, I might need to redo the Shockwave video for that purpose. I feel like everyone dying so quickly was because they were so low on Energon. Maybe they got like a protective shell from Energon and they were so low that it was just their weak metal. This might make sense as to why they were overpowered. The Decepticons had fully conquered Cybertron. They probably were literally turning Cybertron into their own personal factory for Energon. And they were so powered up by it that they were able to kill the Autobots, who were so desperate for the Energon that they needed to fight back against the Decepticons. So it does make sense. August 8th, 2005 was a great day for the Decepticons. I love this comment. I just do. August 8th, 2005. It's just too funny. Concerning Brawn, the trajectory of the blast should have knocked him back and to the left. Clearly, there must have been a second shooter. Yep, from the grassy knoll. That's where the second shooter was. So, but then again, the original storyboards did show the blast went straight through his shoulder and out his back. It was like a straight shot. It wasn't on a weird angle like you see like actually animated. So his death was supposed to be pretty cut and dry. It would have been nice to see more of the other Season 1 and Season 2 characters in Season 3, so that we had a little more variety in the episodes. Yeah, I agree. I think that there should have been a little bit more variety. I think that the the writing for Season 3 was in various different places because it seemed that they wanted to make the scale a lot grander. But then again, there were a lot of Season 2 and Season 1 characters in the third season to fill in the gaps here and there. I mean, Omega Supreme was there for Big Broadcast of 2006, and Bumblebee was there, and he actually got rebuilt into Goldbug, and so many other different characters were there. We just didn't see them a lot. It just kind of had to do with the fact that the 1986 toy line had to take center stage. Minor nitpick: Hound is seen aboard Prime Shuttle as well as leaving it, despite having been at the city. Perhaps one was an error, but which? Okay, this is a little bit of an inconsistency here that I need to address. Hound was helping Cup and Huffer there while Hot Rod went to attack the Autobot shuttle. When the Autobot shuttle came in with Optimus, Sunstreaker, and the Dinobots, Hound was not on that shuttle. When the shuttle lands, Optimus is there at the landing pad, and Sunstreaker is there as well. But Hound is also there at the landing pad, and he's not on the shuttle. So I think that Hound wasn't, coming from Cybertron. Hound assisted Prime in landing, so this way that Prime could attack Optimus Prime. It's Sunstreaker who's the inconsistency. You missed Unicorn, spelling Unicron. But yeah, no, I didn't miss Unicron, and I left him out on purpose. In fact, when I actually did the video, when I said that I miss anybody and I showed Unicron's head, I was literally saying Optimus and Unicron are the obvious ones, and I wasn't really trying to mention them a lot, although I did mention them a lot in this video. So Unicron also didn't truly die. He was shown to be quite alive in Season 3, if you remember. And I also want to take time to thank the voice actors again who helped me with this video and helped make this video a lot better. We also addressed the good old MAGA Jazz for Power of the Primes, and I thought it was really fun. It was a blast to do. And on top of this, I'm going to start answering some additional questions that had to do with other generic videos. What's up? I just found your channel and have been binge watching while sick from work. I love the channel. Thank you for putting the hard work and long hours. I know what it goes into making a vid. More work behind the scenes than most know. I really appreciate it. Question 1. Can you tell me why Alpha Bravo always seems so ready to get destroyed to prove himself, I think? And 2. Where can I get a hold of the intro song you use? I dig it. Well, I really appreciate this. I appreciate the compliments, and I appreciate each and every one of you who watches my videos and enjoys them. It takes me a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort. I currently do work a full-time job, so it's very difficult for me to get these more videos out to you as I can. I do have a Patreon. Anybody who wants to contribute is more than welcome to contribute to it. As well as, you know, if there's anybody who wants to sponsor my videos, I would probably, you know, start adding a sponsor somewhere. Just because I would love to do these videos full time. I really, really enjoy video editing, and I really, really enjoy, you know, the feedback from you guys. To answer your questions, though, Alpha Bravo is probably, you know, selling himself short because he's a helicopter. You know, Slingshot was a jet, and since the IDW Comics wanted to throw, you know, Alpha Bravo to the wayside, you know, I mean, Slingshot obviously got killed, I guess, in the IDW Comics, so Alpha Bravo takes his place. Alpha Bravo turns into a helicopter. A helicopter can't fly as fast as a jet, so he's always going to be trying to prove himself, and that's probably why. But, and the intro that I use, the music, I always, you know, have it in the description. I actually got it from Tony Bacala, is what he goes by on TFW 2005. I think he's the owner, and he did the mix for like so many different Transformers themes and remixes. And when I heard it, I was like, this is cool, I need to use it. What should a new continuity consist of? Go back to G1. I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face. I want to see a reboot of G1. I want them to take the best elements of the comic book, the best elements of the cartoon, give us a coherent, unified G1 storyline that, you know, makes sense, doesn't have any, you know, continuity errors, has lots and lots of characters, try to cover every single G1 character, don't throw any of them out, even make, you know, alternate combiners if you want. Make the aerial bots have both Slingshot and Alpha Bravo. Make, you know, what's his name? Off-Road and, you know, Wild Rider. And, you know, all of these different, you know, characters. There's so many characters that they can do. And, you know, Robots in Disguise, you know, 2015 was so terrible that the aligned continuity is ending because of it. And so I want to see G1 brought back. I want true, legitimate G1 brought back and retell it for modern audiences. Have them wake up in modern day 2018, or, you know, if it takes 2 years for you to get a series out there, 2020, or, you know, whenever. It would be really cool to actually see that. Either that or hit the reset button on the movies. Good God, please. Hit the reset button on the movies. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. Season 1 and 2 bots took earthly vehicles and devices to be in disguise, correct? So why is Cosmos alt mode a UFO? And where did he scan it? Or was it just his Cybertronian alt mode to begin with? Season 3 bots, not so much since they didn't have to hide, so they stayed Cybertronian vehicles. But what about Perceptor? He only mass shifted to a human-sized microscope in his first TV appearance for Chip, and other times he didn't. So is his alt mode technically a Cybertronian microscope? Well, I think that Cosmos probably, I think that from some of the bios that I've seen from different places is that he actually took the UFO design from watching broadcasts of alien movies. And that's the reason why he is a flying saucer. And probably because he took that alt mode, Prime is always throwing him back in space and saying, "You get back up there. You get back up there. You don't belong here with us. You need to stay back up in space." Poor Cosmos lives a lonely life. But I think that the mass shifting, they are changing in size for their purpose. So Perceptor only mass shifts to be a human-sized microscope when he needs to be used. But for the most part, he stays his normal size. How would you vision your own Transformers cinematic universe? Personally, what I would do is I would rebuild it from the ground up. I would, hit the reset button, retell G1, but tell it in a much more exciting way. I wouldn't make the robots look like mangled metal. I don't like the designs of the Transformers robots in the live-action films. I never have, and I don't think I ever will. I mean, Bumblebee's face shouldn't look like, 6 or 7 different plates, and I just never liked the robot designs. And so I would also change things so that they don't come onto Earth like crashing meteors. I would actually have their ship crash on Earth. And I would also do something, I wouldn't mind a G.I. Joe crossover if G.I. Joe could be separate from Transformers most of the time. And G.I. Joe needs to be retold right. And if they're going to retell G.I. Joe, they need to retell Transformers too. What was your reaction to the death of Optimus Prime in the 1986 movie? You know, I think that my jaw hit the floor. You know, the fact that he died, I wasn't as sad about the other Autobot deaths. It was weird. I was a kid who didn't look at death like it was like the most traumatic thing. And I'll tell you why. I think maybe because my grandmother had passed away 2 years prior, and so death was already real to me. And, you know, the idea that a cartoon character can die didn't faze me the same way. I felt that, like, you know, Optimus dying was like, it was definitely jaw-dropping. But I was just as excited, you know, for Hot Rod becoming Rodimus Prime and being dubbed by Optimus to be the new leader. And I probably had that same reaction with, you know, I mean, obviously my jaw going like, oh my gosh, like, Optimus is dead. He can't be dead. This is horrible. And I felt that, like, Ultra Magnus's death was cheapened, you know, because it's like, oh, they're just killing everybody. It was just a shock. But I didn't react, I don't think, the same way that a lot of, like, you know, other kids did. I think, you know, maybe I'm a little bit more stoic than I let out. So question for the Q&A. Could you give us a hint towards your real name? If not, what do you think your life would be like if you hadn't gotten into Transformers? Well, to answer your question about what my life would be like if I wasn't into Transformers, I'm probably going to say this. I probably would be just as much into other things. I mean, I'm obviously into video games. I'm into, you know, science fiction, nerdy, geeky stuff. My dad has been a science fiction nerd, geeks, and, you know, and obviously raised us that way. So I probably would still be into other stuff, but maybe I might not be as so hardcore into one thing like I am with Transformers. I'd probably be just as much of a jack of all trades like I am with Marvel and DC and Star Wars and you know, Mario and anything else. So, but now to answer the question, what is my real name? I will tell you this much. There is a video clip that I'm going to show you here that the good old Macho Man Randy Savage will kind of give you a hint as to what my first name is. I will tell you it's not Randy, it's not Gene, and it's not Ricky. You know, so those three names are out, but this clip will probably tell you.
Cup of coffee in the big time, yeah. Cup of coffee in the big time.
So, with that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this Q&A. I know it probably took a long time to get through all of those questions, and I probably should answer these questions more frequently. If I had more Transformers discussion videos out more, a lot, I'd probably be doing these Q&As more frequently as well. So, you know, obviously stay tuned. If you're new to the channel, obviously hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to hit the bell because I've got another Transformers discussion video coming real soon, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Without further ado, until next time, till all are one.